Hi, I'm Chuck with IWS Motor Coaches, and today I've been given the challenge to help people understand why we feel that owning a Class C is so much better than a Class A. And I thought I'd really start out with, why even own an RV to start with, or a motorhome. And as I was making my notes for this, one thing that kept coming through was life-changing. I've told people that it's absolutely changed my life and my family's life. I'm a type A personality, so traveling was kind of a little bit frustrating for me because I always had to make hotel reservations and we had to be at each destination on time, and it was pretty stressful for me. And once we got our RV, all that went away. Now I had the freedom to bring my wife. She has her kitchen and all the food with us, and we have our own bathroom, and it's just so nice to, when you're traveling down the road, to not have to go into a rest area or go into a restaurant and stand in line, or go to a truck stop and use their restrooms. You've got them right there with you. It's nice to have all your own medicines. I have a little bit of a stomach issue, so eating the right kind of food is important to me, and having my medicine, and then you get to take your family with you, and it's just so nice to be traveling down the road. You don't have to plan anymore. You just find a wide spot, pull over, eat lunch. We even use our motorhome kind of like a pickup. So a good example is a friend of ours got married, and we just drove the motorhome over to the wedding venue, and we were able to go in and enjoy the wedding and have a few drinks afterward, and just hung out in the motorhome, got up the next day and come back home. We'll use it at Christmas time. I don't like to shop. It's hard to believe, but no, I don't like to go to the mall. But if we have to go there and my wife's doing something and I get tired, I can just go out in the parking lot and hang out in the motorhome till she's done. Hope the kids don't watch this, but we hide Christmas presents in the compartments underneath the motorhome up until Christmas. Works out great if you have guests that come over. You got a place to put them. But all of that only works if you have an RV that works. And one of the things we do here at IWS is we really try to set your motorhome up so it's easy to use. You can put all your food in the refrigerator. It's just simple, a 110 outlet, plug in, the refrigerator will stay on, and then anytime you want to go, you just go out and jump in this thing and take off. So it's just really, without even a shadow of a doubt, it's completely changed my life. At the time we're filming this, the COVID pandemic, I think we're in about week 8 of it, and to have my own personal space, we're able to still go camping, we're able to travel. We're already scheduled to go to the SEMA show and show some of our products later on this fall, and the thoughts of booking a hotel room just is not very appealing to me and my family. Now that we are having our own motorhome, it's not a care in the world. We can just go and social distance on our own. I don't know of any other way that I could recommend you go see the country than in an RV. So once you've made the decision to buy an RV, the question is, what type of RV to buy? And we always like to start out with find out what's important to you, and then we kind of work backwards. So an example is if towing capacity is important, then we kind of understand, based on the size of your trailer, do we need to start you out in a single axle motorhome? Do we need to go into a tandem axle motorhome? Is 350 horsepower okay, or do we need to go up to 6? And then all of that has to be balanced out with the budget because things can get very expensive. But at the end, our ultimate goal is to make sure when we see you 5 years from now that you don't say, geez, I wished I would have done this differently. We want to make sure that you're completely informed along the way. And so that's kind of my goal with this video, is to kind of show you why I personally chose a Class C, and why when friends come up to me and they say, why a Class C over a Class A, I'm going to just give you my opinion. So one of the first things is most of your time when you're not using the motorhome is going to be traveling. And to be able to drive with some confidence and comfort was very important to me. So one of the things I noticed, me and my wife, is in a Class A, is that we set way far apart. In a Class A motorhome, the seating position is way to the outside. In fact, before this video, we were going to try to shoot it here, but we couldn't even get the shot wide enough in this room. But in a Class A, I'm going to kind of step here to my left. I'm completely on the left side of the motorhome. My wife is on the right, and we had a hard time communicating back and forth to one another. So I would say in a Class A motorhome, I haven't put a tape measure to it, but you're about 3 to 4, well, you're probably at least 4 to 5 foot apart in the center. So if you figure this thing's 102 inches wide, you know, that puts you at about 4 feet center to center away from each other. In a Class C motorhome, the ones that we sell, the seating position is a lot closer. So you're inboard of the tires, and so now you're really about 30 inches apart. So it's a lot easier for us to have a conversation. Another thing that we like about a Class C, and we're going to be putting up a graphic, is drivability. So in a Class A motorhome, you're sitting on top of the wheels. So the front wheels are going to be right underneath you in the seat, and they may even be slightly behind you. And when you're driving that gives you a complete different sensation. It's kind of hard to explain unless you've driven one, but it can be very unnerving to a lot of people. When you're driving down the road, it's really hard to reference where the tires are because they're underneath you and to the outside. In a Class C, the front tires are forward, just like when you're driving a car or a pickup and you have that hood. So for me personally and my family, we feel the transition to go from our pickup to our motorhome is very natural. Everything is about the same. The steering wheel's in the same spot, the engine's in the same spot, the mirrors are in the same spot. And that's another thing when it comes to backing up a Class A motorhome. The mirror location is typically farther forward. When you're in a Class C, the mirror is back further, just like we were in a pickup. So it's very natural to go from one to the other. A lot of people complain, people that have traded in their Class A's, the person in the passenger side says they always feel like they're falling off the side of the road. And that's due to seating position. The passenger and the driver in a Class A sit way apart from each other to the very outside of the motorhome. So when you're going down the road, the passenger is sitting right over the top of that right-hand wheel, and that right-hand wheel is running about this far from the edge of the road, so it's very uncomfortable sitting out there. In a Class C, because you set inboard of the tires are running on the outside and you're inboard, so it's a lot more natural feeling. My wife said in a Class A, she always felt like she was in a fishbowl because of the huge windshield. And she said that she felt very uncomfortable because there was never anything to put her hands on. So we knew, you know, while I can't make any safety claims, I definitely, you know, being the patriarch of our family, it's my responsibility to try to put my family in the safest position I can. And I feel having that big engine out there and that hood, as well as a dash, is a lot safer for me and my family. Now again, that's my personal opinion, but I can tell you right now, if I had to hit something head on, I definitely would rather do it in a Class C than a Class A. The technology in the Class C's has really come a long way. Right now we have lane keeping, we got crash mitigation devices in them. Personally, I'd rather drive our motorhome than a pickup, and so would my wife on these long distance trips because we sit up high, we get to see the scenery in a whole different, whole new different light. So it's very, very appealing to us. The other thing we got to talk about when we're talking about Class C is the wide range of chassis selections and engine selections. So for the sake of this video, I'm going to go right to the top. So most of our premier chassis that we're building are the Freightliners with the Detroit DD16 engine. And that engine it's the largest engine on planet Earth that we can put in a motorhome current state in the year 2020. It makes 600 foot-pounds of torque, or 600 horsepower. But what's so impressive is it makes 1,850 foot-pounds of torque at 975 RPM. That's just off an idle. This thing, it's like driving a locomotive when it comes to power and performance. Why is that important? Well, from a safety aspect, those of us that have been in a motorhome that's been underpowered, you come to a hill and all of a sudden you're the slowest person in traffic, and it can be very uncomfortable. When you've got that horsepower to carry you and get you on up out of traffic, it can be a very good feeling to have. Another thing about the engine, just staying with this Detroit, and granted, there's all kinds of engine options that we can put into these, but it could get very confusing. So in staying with the Detroit DD16, it has a 1.2 million mile B50 life rating. So that's a standard set out, an industry standard, a B50 rating, and you can look it up on the internet. But basically what it's saying is Detroit has to prove that at least 50% of their engines went beyond 1.2 million miles before they had any sort of catastrophic engine failure. And being awarded a 1.2 million mile B50 rating is just incredible. That's basically saying you can have extreme confidence that this engine will go over 1 million miles before you have any major engine catastrophes due. Another interesting thing, and I've printed this brochure right here because some of the stuff that I'm going to say, people will argue with me on the internet. So I really want to make sure, everything we talk about, we validate it. And that is maintenance interval. So on a DD16 under long haul, which is what you would be in a motorhome, or short haul, if you're running short distances, stop and start in and around town, the oil change interval is 40,000 miles. If you're a person that gets out on the freeway and runs, from Idaho to Arizona and then stays a few months and then jumps in and runs, you'd be in the long haul category. And the oil change interval is 55,000 miles. It's like the guy on King of the Hill said, he changes his oil every 3,000 miles or when he gets bored. That's probably what you'll do with one of these motorhomes. You'll just change it for the sake of changing it. Another thing is a lot of people ask about the DEF, the diesel exhaust filter, and the normal cleaning of the depth filter is 500,000 miles. So these things they're prepared. I tell everybody, I think the worst thing you can do to one of these Renegade or show haulers is not drive them. They're literally meant to get out on the road and start living. And I tell everybody, life is for the living. Get in this thing and run it. Use that generator, put 5,000-6,000 hours on that generator. It should be a badge of honor that you're out living and enjoying life. Most of you that have bought these are a little bit later in life. You put in your time, it's time to get out and start living again. Now that we're done talking about the engine a little bit, we got to move back into the transmission. And there's all kinds of options there. Typically, we've been putting in the Allison automatic transmission. The drivability of it is just like driving a pickup. It's designed to take the horsepower. Again, all of these things are designed to go 1 million miles. So just incredibly well built. Another thing to talk about is towing capacity. Many of the Class A motorhomes that you buy can only tow about a 5,000-pound trailer. They build them on such light chassis that there's no more capacity left. On most of our motorhomes, we range from about 12,000-pound trailer capacity at the lower end up to 40,000-pound towing capacity. And that's just incredible. I just say, we almost have more chassis than we have motorhome. These things are just incredibly well built. And keep in mind, this chassis that we're building these on, most of them were designed to haul 80,000 pounds all day, every day, up and down the freeway for millions of miles. They're just a whole different animal. But when you add all of that up, nothing matters if you can't stop it. And that's where the design components really come in. So let's say you take a tandem axle motorhome and it has a 50,000 pound gross vehicle weight rating. So that means we could put the motorhome on a scale and the manufacturer said it could weigh up to 50,000 pounds. So most of ours come in at around 35,000, tandem axles, 37,000 pounds. So let's just say, for the sake of discussion, it comes in at 35,000 pounds. That means we could put 15,000 pounds of weight in the motorhome, and the brakes are still designed to stop that. Where I'm leading to is if you have a 50,000 pound or a 52,000 pound gross vehicle weight rating, the manufacturer of that chassis has designed it to stop that much weight. So if it's designed to stop 50,000 pounds and you only weigh 35,000 pounds, you have way more braking capability. So I hope all that computed. The other thing is all of our chassis come with air brakes, air disc brakes. And on the gauge, we're going to have an air pressure application gauge. And as you're applying the brakes, this gauge is going to record for you or show you how much of the usable braking that you're using up. Another great feature is the Jacobs engine brake, and we equip that on all of our motorhomes that it's available on. So let's talk about engine braking, and I hope I get this right, but I'm trying to talk in just kind of paraphrasing here. So the Jacobs engine brake on the DD16, based on the research that I found, has 600 braking horsepower. When the engine brake is set to the third stage, you have full engine braking horsepower. So a guy once explained it to me is that if it takes 600 horsepower to go up the hill, you're going to need at least 600 braking horsepower to slow you down coming down the hill. And so the way this engine compression brake works, and I would invite you to go on YouTube and just look up Jacobs compression brake, but it's not an exhaust brake. It's a true engine brake, and it's designed right into the cylinder heads, and it changes the valve timing to build compression inside of the engine to slow you down. So I'll give you an example. On a really steep hill, there's 3 settings on the engine brake. And let's say it's super steep and I'm really heavy. I want to use 100% of that 600 braking horsepower. I'll set the setting to 3. And as I'm coming down, it's given me all 600 horsepower in braking to slow me down. But let's say it's slowing me down too much and I only want to use 300 horsepower braking horsepower. I switch the brake setting to position number 2, and then I'm only going to get 300 brake horsepower. So if it took me 600 to go up, I'm only going to use 300 and then I can keep a nice constant speed as I go down the hill. And then if I'm on a shallower hill, I can set the number 1 setting and maybe I only get 100 braking horsepower. I hope all this makes sense, but ultimately, it's unbelievable to have that type of braking, to have the engine braking, or it's also known as an engine retarder, as well as air disc brakes. You're able to stop this thing. And then let's go even one next step further. After we've stopped, and we got to set the parking brake. A lot of the Class C or Class A motorhomes use a cheap transmission parking brake. And with these, you get full air brakes, spring cans that are setting the parking brakes. If you have a tandem motorhome, you get a parking brake in each of the rear axles. So you can really hold this thing still. The one thing that nobody wants to talk about is breakdowns. And I've always said for years here in business, being in the towing business and now in the RV business for all these years, things that are mechanical could break down, but we can always fix things that break. When it comes to serviceability, with a Class A motorhome, if you were to just try calling around, or when this video is over, just jump on the internet or the yellow pages and try to find somebody that'll actually work on a Class A engine. They charge more. Why do they charge more? Because they're so difficult to work on. Most of the big Class A's have the engine turned sideways in the back, and they run a transaxle, and you got to be Houdini to get inside of there to work on them. When I had my repair shop, I just refused to work on Class A motorhomes. The other downside to a Class A that people don't understand is when you break down in a Class A, let's say you're in a remote area, and well, it doesn't matter where you broke down. If you're at the repair shop and you're going to stay in the motorhome, the technician is going to typically access your engine compartment from inside of your motorhome. So it's kind of awkward to be in there trying to cook breakfast while the technician's walking in and out of your motorhome. With a Class C motorhome, we literally just open up the hood and they can perform all the work from the outside while you're inside your motorhome, kind of away from all that distraction. Another thing that I want to point out about a Class C or our Super Cs is that they're serviced by Freightliner or Volvo or Western Star or Peterbilt truck shops. And these are shops that are typically open 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. This is what they do. When it comes to a Class A chassis, they're kind of like a unicorn. They're kind of out there on their own. And it's very hard for technicians to get good, solid information on them because the motorhome manufacturer's pointing their finger this way, the chassis people are pointing it. But when you're running a Freightliner truck, the buck stops with Freightliner. If you're running a Peterbilt chassis, the buck stops with Peterbilt. All of these are all reasons that have aligned themselves. Look, I've been selling tow trucks here in the same location for over 25 years. We know a thing or two about trucks. And that's why we've always had such a hard time. You know, when Ford came out with the F650 years ago, we really struggled with selling them because they didn't seem to have a dealer support network that would really accept responsibility for that class of truck. They've really evolved now. They're a lot better with that. But International Peterbilt, Kenworth, Volvo, they've all been in the truck business for hundreds of years. And so this is nothing new to them. This is what they do. Then heavens forbid you break down. That's really where we can really add a lot of value to, because we sell tow trucks all over the United States, all over the world. In fact, we've even sold tow trucks in Trinidad. So we're very connected. I would argue to say here on video that there isn't another RV distributor in the United States that has more connections than we do in the towing industry, or more abilities to help you if you break down on the road, because you're never going to break down at home. You're always going to break down on the road. Towing. Just pick up the phone and call a towing company and ask them how much they were going to charge you to tow your 40-foot Class A motorhome. I have dear friends in the towing business. Most of them won't even tow Class A motorhomes anymore because they are so challenging to hook up that the risk just isn't worth it. Now, call the same towing company and say, hey, I have a Freightliner motorhome, Class C, and it's no problem, because to a towing company, towing a Class C motorhome is no different than towing a truck. A Class A motorhome, again, it's like a rare unicorn. They require specialized trailers. There's no towing attachment points on them. I know this for a fact. I was a Wreckmaster instructor and taught classes all over the United States. And hooking up to these Class A motorhomes is challenging. There's people that make specialized adapters. There's towing forums where people are trying to figure out how to tow these monstrosities. But a Class C, it falls right into that wheelhouse of just being a truck. Now that I've gone through serviceability, we've gone through the chassis, we need to talk a little bit more about the motorhome itself and what it means to own one of these. For me, I've always been a bit of a rebel, a guy that likes to stand out from the crowd, and I kind of go my own way. And if you just jumped on RV Trader And right now, just after this video, look up used Winnebago or used Jayco Class A motorhome. All good motorhomes, but look at the sea of used motorhomes. There's pages and pages and pages of these used Class A's. I'm going to make a pretty bold statement right here on for the world to see, but if you have a Class A and it's over 10 years old, we don't even have the ability to take it in on trade because the value has diminished so much in 10 years on a Class A that it's too risky to take them. Now, we have wholesale buyers, but for us personally, we're not comfortable. And another reason is just getting somebody financed on a 10-year-old motor Class A is very challenging. However, we are on the hunt for 10-year-old Renegade and show haulers. We love them. We have a list of people waiting for a good used 10-year-old Renegade or show hauler to show up because there's still hundreds and thousands of miles of life left in this thing. So there's a really good value there having a used motorhome. And being able to stand out. You know, when I went to Alaska with my wife, we were there for 30 days. We never saw another Renegade or another show hauler on the whole trip. I really like being in that kind of exclusive owners club. And the service that we offer goes right in with that. I always like to say we sell luxury motorhomes and we're going to give you luxury service. And that's why we've come up with our IWS Advantage package. When you buy a Class C from us, we're going to give you an iPad. And just like I'm making this video, we have our own recording studio and our own videographers on staff. I'm waving at Zach right now. And we go out and make these little videos called Advantage videos on how to use the microwave and how to use the DirecTV and how to set the air conditioner and how to dump the sewage. And we put all of these videos on an iPad and we give that to you when you buy the motorhome. Now you can search the internet and you're not going to find these because these are very private and very exclusive. It's just like our repair shop. You know, we had Parker Johnstone, who was an IndyCar racer here, and he was blown away by our shop. He said even Roger Penske himself would be proud of it. But the thing that you need to know about our shop is we only work on our customer motorhomes. We don't work on anybody else's. So we reserve our spot for you. So it can be a very unnerving, you know, when you're out on the road and you don't remember how to do something, you just grab our iPad, watch the quick video, the tutorial, and then you should be able to get through it. We also have a private website for our customers, an exclusive. We give you an access code so you can access the videos there. And it's all an honor system. We ask everybody to not share the videos. People come in and want to buy our Advantage videos and we just don't do it. It's a very exclusive service that we offer. Another exclusive service we offer is that somebody here at IWS carries a phone with them 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and we only answer our RV customers' phone calls and our towing customers' phone calls. We want to make sure that you have a voice there on the end of the line. So much of what we do, we don't share with the public because it's very exclusive. Another example is when you get your iPad, we have an emergency checklist. So if you're involved in an accident, you can open up your iPad and we have numbers for you to call in order to be able to make sure that we're getting you taken care of in the fastest possible way. You know, after all, most of you watching this have worked very hard your life. It's time for you to enjoy it and get the service. It's really not that hard to give good service. Well, in closing, I hope I really kind of helped understand a little bit why I think owning a Class C or a Super C, that the advantages far outweigh those in a Class A. And I hope to see you out on the road.